I'm really looking forward to this episode of Growth Stories. So I've got sat opposite me Dr. Lee Williams. Lee, good morning.
Good morning.
So Lee, tell me about yourself and tell the audience about yourself. I know loads about you, but please let the audience know because you're really fascinating and managed over time to build up a great relationship.
Thank you for that. I always describe myself as a bit of an oddball, really. I'm one of these people that jumps between the corporate world and the consulting world and larger companies and one-man bands. So bit of a corporate adventurer, really. Had quite a broad career. Started off in the life science industry, moved across into financial services, spent some time in retail supply chain, logistics and packaging. And I ended up back in financial services and spent some time with some of your customers, such as Garrick.
And that's how we met.
Yep.
I was at Garrick, and that was an incredible project. And you did an amazing job in bringing that to fruition and obviously integrating with a partner system. So, I know how complex these solutions, these integrations and business change can be. But just kind of going back, I mean, when I look at your background, your CV, and, I got a qualification in economics, home economics, when I was about 15. But your qualifications, MBA, Six Sigma, it'd be great for the audience to hear how you use all that great learning in the workplace.
Yeah, I think probably the first thing is my first degree in pharmacology and physiology. It was one of those things you go to university, you study, and you then sort of work out that I don't really want to work in a laboratory every day. And so sort of, not in the sense I wasted it, it taught me some things, but I went back and did an MBA primarily because I wanted to understand how organizations work. I spent a lot of time in the sales environment, and, I'm keen to continually learn and understand things. How do you take a company apart and put it back together again? And to be fair, that's partly what Mark asked me to do when I came in here was, how does it all fit together? And if we take it apart, can you put it back together? So that's what we did, really.
And in terms of the sectors, obviously, some would argue that it's not exactly the most, excuse the word, sexy sector, plant hire or plant associated, the higher sector.
Yeah.
But in terms of over your career, what sectors would you say have stood out, or do you just see them all the same?
They're all the same, really, in a sense that you've got a set of customer requirements you need to deliver towards. I think the thing I enjoy more than anything is, keeping happy customers, growing businesses, developing teams, all the sort of things that you can describe that are actually really transferable across industry sectors, whether you're delivering a box of carrier bags to Asda so they can run the store, or you're delivering a welfare unit to site such that the site can run, or even in financial services, my previous big role as chief commercial officer with Personal Group, one of the standout things that we did there that I instigated was that we actually had a former customer die, worked for one of the large parcel carriers, and I suggested to the chief exec at the time that we should actually pay out on the policy that had lapsed because his wife was about to potentially lose her house and this, that, and the other. And to be fair to the chief exec, she spoke to the board and we agreed to do it. But we made a real difference. And partly that was not because we wanted any publicity or anything like that, but more to help reinforce to the company the why of what we did. And so at the end of the day, most organizations are there to, in a sense, help other organizations. And so if you're helping them and whatever you do, if you look at it from that perspective, then it's a positive, whether ultimately it's a unit that's a toilet block that someone has to clean and make ready to go out, whether it's a box of carrier bags or whether it's an insurance policy, all of those things need to be the best they can for the customers you've got.
Obviously, we talk about people a lot, and obviously it's our, I always say that people is the first component you need in a business. And, how did you grow at these different organizations? How did you grow your teams, and what tips could you share with us in terms of like recruiting the best talent?
I think it's important to, you know, be honest and open, firm and fair with people. I don't think you should accept mediocrity, but again, I think you've also got to understand that quite often you don't always get a finished article when you bring people into your teams. I think one of the most important things is to recruit the people that are right for the roles, not right for you. Try not to create mirror images. I remember a couple of years ago that one of my direct reports was interviewing somebody, and he said, "Oh, you'll really like him. He's just like us," and he was, and we didn't recruit him because he was just like us. That's not what we wanted. And generally, the question I ask for most of my recruits has been, "Are you going to cause me problems?" And the ones that say no, I tend not to employ. I want people that cause me problems. I want them to be challenging. I want them to, for positive reasons, to challenge the business. You know, I see my role either as a consultant or as an executive to be there to help drive the business forward, to affect change and make it happen. But quite often the actual answers come from the people who do the work. You know, one of the things I learned from Lean was that if you want to fix something, the people who do the work are the ones that generally can fix it.
So during your career, what's the most intelligent or kind of smartest growth idea that you've come up with?
From my own perspective, I think early doors when I was in sales, I identified some core products that would open doors for us. Bit of a loss leader type approach, but I knew they were pretty instrumental to allowing access to customers. I used to sell to universities and research environments, and you know they weren't as secure as they are today, but they were pretty secure. So getting in through the door and that was, you know, I identified what the right products were to get me in. And
Like a Trojan
a
horse?
Trojan horse. And the other thing was that we had some dog products, and if a customer had ever ordered those, I used to tell them that it would never arrive and I was cancelling it. And I used to tell them to order from our competitors. And yeah, they were a bit bemused about that. And I used to say to them, I'm only ever going to say good products. I'm never going to say bad products. And we have some bad products. So these are the ones not to order. And that built trust as well. So those are probably the two things that I learned was that, you know, find the easy door to go through and build trust. And if you can do those two things, then generally you're successful.
And what do you think is in terms of like the standout highlight so far of your career? Because you've got another 50 years to go. We're going to keep you going forever. What would you say is the standout for you moment or experience?
I think there isn't probably one big thing. You know, I've done quite a lot of different things. I'm not somebody that spends 20 years working in one company or even one industry sector. Probably the most fulfilling thing are the things that people say about me, the people that have worked for me or that I've worked with, and how I've helped develop them and their thinking. And probably the standout thing is when people say, you made us think differently. You know, that's probably my objective when I'm working with people is to help them think differently. That's not to necessarily change their thinking, but to some degree to broaden it. I think the other thing really is delivering. You know, I've delivered some IT solutions into organizations where we've fundamentally changed them. You know, it sounds quite ironic, but I'm quite proud. And you know, if I walk around companies like Garrick, for example, and I see the barcodes on the side of the units that we implemented, and the fact that that business is now digitized. That's, you know, we've taken it from paper to glass. So, you know, everybody in our business, their jobs changed as a consequence of what we did. So yeah, quite proud of delivering those types of solutions. And obviously big change was an enormous part of that.
In terms of in, I make a lot of mistakes in terms of, things I do, but you have to make the mistakes to learn. It's part of going through that whole process. What would you say that one of, let's say, the thing that you would say that a mistake that you've made, but actually you've turned a negative into a positive, and what, your learnings?
I think sometimes you rely on people too much. I think judging, and that's upwards and downwards. So there have been times when I've allowed other people to do some things that actually I know I should have done myself. And then on the flip side, there were times when I'd done things that I really should have let them do. And I think you always learn from those mistakes. I think implementing a solution like Big Change as well is also a series of failures to get to the success. You never quite know what's going to work when you step into digitizing things. We're very resilient as human beings, but systems aren't. They do what you ask them to do, and so being able to manage that ambiguity as well. There is a sort of series of challenges you have to overcome. But which, to be fair, is what makes it really exciting.
Now, I know you've got obviously a lovely family, and also there's other things in your life that are very precious to you. And I know you do work in community.
Mm.
It'd be good to hear about that a little bit, and then also understand about your ambitions, because obviously you're very much your own boss. You're a leader. What can we look forward to from Dr. Lee Williams?
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to do when I left personal group was to, well, one, spend a little bit more time at home, because I spent a lot of time in Milton Keynes. And I identified that, charity would be something that would be worthwhile working for, to give something back. And so I work as a trustee for Hospice at Home West Cumbria. I've been doing that now probably for just over 6 months. I help them, or I'm part of the income sort of generation, marketing income generation committee. And I help them with some GDPR sort of regulations. What I would say is, it's an amazing organization, run on very low resources, doing exceptional things in the community. And it is very much a West Cumbrian charity. And if I can do a little bit to help them, sort of steer them slightly more commercially. But I must admit, they're exceptionally well done. Quite eye-opening to turn up and see how all of these sorts of organizations run themselves so well, so little resources, very well organized. But yeah, I enjoy giving a bit back.
So now, obviously, I've just handed over my checkbook or my card, and I'll be making a donation, because, all charities are great charities, but it's always nice, to hear those personal stories. And sorry, go.
So the best bit is that I'm doing something where there's no day rate, there's no pound signs, there's no, it's just something nice to do. As long as I feel like I'm contributing, then it's positive.
I'm actually just about to get involved in something not quite like a hospice, but something that I hopefully will be help to save lives. But more will be revealed later.
Excellent.
But going back to the commercial world and business and what puts food on the table.
Yeah.
What is your big ambition? What when you wake up in the morning, or when you're dreaming at night, what you're dreaming about?
It's a good question. Sometimes I think perhaps I don't always have one, but I probably made a decision about a year and a half ago to do things I enjoy doing, to not necessarily put too much pressure on myself to have to travel as much as I've done historically, or spend so much time away from home. I think that work-life balance, spending more time at home, is ironically quite important. So one of my ambitions is actually to spend more time at home. But the other thing that I'm really interested in, and this plays back to the big change stuff, is I'm really interested in the sort of digitization of operations and businesses. So I've been involved with a couple of software companies that sit in the wellbeing space at the moment. And so I do some sort of strategy consulting for a couple of wellbeing and a learning management company. So I like startup businesses, and I like a blend. I do sign up to sort of Charles Handy's sort of portfolio lifestyle, or portfolio workload, and I probably had one for 25 years and not necessarily always thought of it that way. But yeah, I would say I've had a portfolio career as opposed to a single type of career.
But I think, that's a real quality in you, that you can jump into a van and, communicate and spend time with, the blue collar workers, or, engineers, and then you can sit in a boardroom and be involved with a business that could be one of the top 1,000 companies in the UK. So there's not many people that have that talent, and you have that talent. And in terms of in terms of as a leader, what could you share with the audience of in terms of the skills and that you've learned? What would be something kind of stand out that you could share in terms of a particular skill or particular way of working that you would really recommend for the audience to think about?
I think when I wrote my application to business school, I wrote it on emotional intelligence. And the one thing I would say that is a strength is that I'm empathetic. I think as any salesperson, you've really got to understand the customer's position. It's not about you selling stuff. It's really about them buying something to help them. So I think empathy is pretty fundamental to any role. Most of the issues I've seen throughout my career across different sectors, it's not sector specific or role specific. It is that people genuinely only see their perspective on something and not the other person's. And so I spend a lot of time. In the last role that I was in, I was brought in primarily to build relationships, not necessarily from a commercial perspective, although again, I had to do that with a number of key organizations like the Royal Mail and Unite Union. So some challenging conversations in difficult spaces, but empathy is really the thing that I would say is pretty fundamental. And if you can approach a situation empathetically,
Mhm.
then at least you're knowledgeable about that situation and not blindsided because of things you don't understand. So I'd always say to the teams that work for me is to make sure you understand the other person's perspective.
Dr. Lee, it's been a fascinating conversation, and I know that the listeners will get so much from it. I always like to give our audience the opportunity to connect with our contributors and people that I speak to. How would people get in touch with you, Lee? Is it LinkedIn or?
That's probably the best thing. Yeah, LinkedIn. I do have a bit of a corporate website, but I tend not to operate through those sorts of things. I work with people that I know or I get introduced to, and I've never marketed myself for 30 years. I've always generally worked with people I know, and I tend to get brought in to help them, put a bit of horsepower into the projects to be that sort of temporary resource that can move things forward. So yeah, if people want to get in touch, they can get in touch on LinkedIn.
So there you go. I'm plugging Lee and recommending Lee.
Thank you.
If any project that you're looking to, embark on, big or small, Lee has all the facets, the elements that you need, the transparency, the empathy and customer focus. And I can highly recommend you contacting Lee. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you.